Hi, my name is Ron Tijerina, and in 1991, I was convicted of a crime I did not commit. I was sentenced to a prison term of 14 to 25 years, and I had no idea what that would look like. I had only been married 5 years to Catherine, who is also executive director here of the Ridge Project. And today we just want to share a little bit about who we are. We want to invite you into our lives to see where we've been and where we are and where we want to go.
So in 1991, Ron went to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And I remember thinking as we left the courthouse, first of all, being so angry and so frustrated because, how dare they do this to us? And not even thinking past how it was impacting me or how it was impacting Ron until we pulled into the driveway. I had my sister-in-law with me, and as we got out, it dawned on me, oh my gosh, I have to go in there and explain to my sons why Daddy's not with me. And of course, every time that Daddy had left before, Blake and Brandon were so excited. They were 2 and 4, and because when Daddy came home, he'd always come and scoop them up and play games and put them up on his shoulder and go around, I am the greatest, and be super cool and super fun. And I was the boring parent. And so I come in, of course, they run past me. They go, oh, Mommy, and then they look past me, and Taryn and my little son, who's 4, says, where's Daddy? And I'm just struggling to try to find the words to try to explain that Daddy's not coming home until I have no idea when, and that Daddy's in prison. So, guys, and I decided, I don't know how I decided or why I decided the truth was what I needed to tell them. And so I told them, Daddy's in jail. And I remember them just looking back at me like, okay, Daddy's in jail, but so where's Daddy? When's he coming home? Having no concept at all of what jail was, or what that meant. And so I'm like, well, guys, jail's like big people timeout. And so my oldest son says, he's 4, so he'd been in timeout lots. And he says, okay, so Daddy'll be home in 5 minutes. I was like, no. Big people timeout is a little bit longer than little people timeout. And I don't know when Daddy's coming home. And I remember watching this innocent expression on their face just kind of transform into fear. Because suddenly, they knew Mom was upset and scared, and they were scared. They had no idea why Mom was upset. They didn't know what jail was, but it had occurred to them that jail was something that was bad.
Think about the innocence. Understand, though I was innocent of what I was convicted of, the choices that I was making that led up to that moment in my life, I wasn't being a dad. What I know to be a dad today. I wasn't being a husband. What I know what a husband is to look like today, I was not that. When I say I wasn't a dad, I was not a father in the sense of what a father is. I may have had that title. I may even have had that label on me, father. But I was not animating or activating that office in my life. I was activating something, what I call a pretender, or what I call not the real McCoy. I was a fake. I was not a husband, nor I was a father, though I was in those roles. I didn't know what a man of his word looked like. So I see, though I have to live with the label, what I did was I put that label, a child of an incarcerated father, or a child of an incarcerated parent, or the son of an ex-con, the daughter of a convict. These labels that now my family has to carry, the wife of an inmate. Ooh.
We live in a society that doesn't let people heal and overcome incarceration. And until we experienced this, I had no idea that was true, because I was one of them. Meaning one of them, if somebody went to prison, they were always the offender. And their family was always less than desirable. And so, to live with that label and to move forward with that label, it is a very difficult place to be. And as parents, to know that what we did or didn't do put that label on our children, what a heavy thing.
But it is good to know that I can make a difference today. And not only in the lives of my children, but in the lives of everybody who has come in contact with us, that we can show them and we can tell them, look, there's a better way. I say often that I'm the antidote to this recidivism problem, people coming in and out of prison. And I say often that the Rich Project, not only am I the antidote, but we have the vaccine. Because I understand now that the same poison, if you got bit by a snake and it was a poisonous snake, you would need that same poison to cure you, to be that anti-venom. And I know now that I must be that anti-venom, because I was once that snake spewing poison wherever I went. And now I am that anti-venom.
The first Christmas after Ron went to prison was really a turning point for us in our lives. I remember I signed up for a program to be able to go and get some help for Christmas gifts. I didn't have a job, and Ron, who had been working, was now in prison. And so we were destitute. I mean, we were really, really poor. So anyway, so we signed up for this Christmas program, and I show up the second day, and I'm standing in line. The line is pretty short. There's 3 or 4 people, and I get in there, and this really sweet little old lady comes up to me, and she says, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. There's not much left for little ones, but come on, we'll do the best we can, and we can see." Well, there's all kinds of food and other stuff, but there just weren't a lot of toys left. So we're standing, and I'm looking, and I get a few things, and I'm super grateful because I had no money to buy my kids anything for Christmas. And as I came back home, and I'm in my bedroom, and I'm wrapping the presents, and I will never forget, there was this teddy bear I'd gotten for Brandon, and Brandon had just turned 3. And I was wrapping it up, and I looked, and as I looked closer, it's like, wow, he's like obviously used, and I'm trying to, get him cleaned up and spruced up a little bit. And I'm thinking, all of a sudden, this teddy bear, this toy that I'm giving to my children, to my son, represents the life that we've built and that we're giving to them, which is like, I had this ridiculous thought of imagining somebody standing over a toy box and saying, well, this teddy bear is kind of old. Should we throw it away, or should we give it to Cathy's son? Should we throw it away, or should we give it to Cathy? Well, let's give it to Cathy's son. And it just hit me that my sons were going to have a life that was kind of a secondhand life, a life nobody signs up for, nobody wants for their kids. And they didn't get to pick. They didn't get to pick it. It just was handed to them. And I was overwhelmed with hopelessness. And I remember just kind of walking out of the room and thinking, I can't do this, because I have destroyed my children's lives. I am not, this is awful. And so as I'm walking back and forth, trying to decide what I'm going to do, and seriously, the only time in my life I ever considered killing myself was that night. And I'm thinking my kids would be better off without me. They could be in a stable environment and have a first-hand life, a fresh chance. And as I walk to the kitchen, which is where we kept all the drugs and, not drugs, prescription medicines and all of that, the drug cabinet, I had to walk by my son's bedroom, and I peek in and look at them, and there they are. We have bunk beds for them, and they're both on the bottom bunk. And Blake's got his arm around Brandon, like, I just looked at that, protected in his sleep. And I just looked at them and thought, if something happens to me, what will happen to them? Their dad's in prison. Our families would fight over them. And how miserable and how hurt they would be, because I would be putting more pain into their lives. And I remember walking back to my bedroom and sitting down on my bed and really just crying out to God and saying, God, if you're really real and there's any sense in this, then I I need to know that right now because I have no hope. Everything I ever believed in is turned into this nightmare of my life. And so I opened my Bible and it became life. It was literally this sense that I wasn't alone. I didn't have to do this alone. And I knew I couldn't do it alone. And so this lifeline, it was like when I was a little girl and scared, and my dad would scoop me up, and I would rest my head, and I could hear his heartbeat. And that sound overpowered every other noise and brought comfort. It was like that. It's like that moment of knowing I'm not alone. God is real. And as I started reading my Bible, it was just peace and courage and hope restored. And knowing that, in Christ, it wasn't a second life. It was a second chance at life, not a second hand life. And just making that decision that for my life and for my children, that every day from there forward would be different, would be about serving God and be about doing the right thing. And in that, there was the hope and the joy and the first-hand, best opportunity of a best life.
Come home, come home. Come home, come home. Come home, come home. Come home, come home.
I remember when I would say goodbye to my boys, and it would literally cling around my neck. They would wrap their bodies around me. Now, Brandon being so little, I would be holding him and he would just be grabbing me. But it was really Blake who would not let go. He would not let go. And it got to a point of my incarceration where both my sons, but really Blake, from the moment at the beginning of my incarceration, he wouldn't let go of me when it was time to say goodbye, to midterm of my incarceration, he got to a place of where he wouldn't hold me when he said goodbye. He got so numb for him, or that was better for him. In fact, he said that to me. He said, Dad, I can't open this door anymore. It hurts too much. So when we would say goodbye, I would literally have to pick up his arms and have him hold me while he would be limp, and he didn't want to open that door, or those floodgates of pain and suffering that comes with saying goodbye. And it got to a point where both my sons, they said, Dad, we can't do this anymore. We don't want to go see you anymore because we can't, the goodbyes are too much. We can't do it. And this was on a phone. I was actually at Mansfield Correctional at this time. And this was about 1993, when I told both my sons, well, you know what? Let's not say goodbye anymore. How about we just start saying, see you next time? And I love my sons. I'm so proud of them to see the men that they have become. They were dealt something that no child should ever have to go through. I said the other day, my daughter, she's 7 years old, and I said, I'm talking to a group of men, and I see the innocence that I've already taken from her. I met my daughter in the prison and visiting room, and we can talk about that in a little bit, how that happened. But when you ask her what a warden is, she knows. You ask her what the gates are, she knows. She's 7 years old. Or even correction officer, she knows. And my prayer is that every dad that we come in contact with, every dad that is still locked up, every dad that is still out there doing things that they know they're not supposed to be doing, would stop and wake up and to actually see the consequences and know that the repercussions of their choices are felt from generation to generation to generation. Long after they're gone, these type of moments, this type of pain and suffering, it just doesn't go away overnight.
So Ron went to prison. When Ron went to prison, I ended up on welfare. And oh gosh, dang it. That's a whole journey of being, like now not only am I the wife of an incarcerated person who's been all over the news, all over the newspapers, but now I'm standing in the grocery line with food stamps, which is a whole nother journey. But I remember how excited I was to get my food stamps. And we'd been waiting. We had to wait like a couple weeks to get our food stamps after Ron went to prison. I went in and filled out all this paperwork. And so we were like literally down to crackers and peanut butter. And so when the mailman came...
Ghetto cookies.
Yeah, ghetto cookies. And so I go and I get my food stamps and I come running into my mobile home. And Blake and Brandon, they're like, what? I'm like, we got our food stamps! So I'm super excited. They're 2 and 4, mind you. So throw them in the car, go to the supermarket. I'm getting food. I'm standing in line and putting my food on the conveyor belt, and I'm so happy that we're gonna have food. And this guy's like, ma'am. I turn around, and there is Brandon, who's 3 years old, eating raw hamburger, telling the people behind us, we got our food stamps today. We got our food stamps. I'm like, no, stop. And so then we had a little talk on the way home. We don't tell people we're on food stamps. Shh. When looking back, I think, wow, I was only on welfare for 8 years. Now, people are like, 8 years? I'm like, no, only. Not 8 generations, thank you very much. 8 years. And during that time, we went from a place of when Ron went to prison, and I had this car that he loved, that he had bought just a few weeks before.
It was a Cutlass Supreme, 1974, 4-door.
Oh, no. That was the one before that. It was the Malibu.
Oh, my Malibu.
That you thought was like...
Yeah, I would wax it, wash it.
Yeah. It had tires that drove like this, right? Because
It had
something was seriously wrong with that car. So
It wasn't a lowrider.
Yeah, and it was what I deem now as not really a car, because I didn't ever know if it was really going to start when I got in it. I didn't know if it was really going to get me where I wanted to go, or even if it got me there, I didn't really know if I was going to get home. And getting to the place of having a house, buying a house, being off of welfare, and telling my kids then, guys, go tell everybody we're off welfare. They're like, no way. I'm like, look, I'm paying for groceries with my own money. And people are just like, okay. And walk away because they didn't get it. They didn't get that overcoming, oh my gosh. That was huge for me.
To where he understands his role as a husband, as a father, is to not only be the head of this household, but to take this mantle with such great respect and such great valor that when his wife and his kids see him, that he can hear them say, that's my dad. I want to be just like my dad. That's my husband, and I'm proud of him. When I hear those things for my kids today, it's an unspeakable joy that had I not had this prison experience, I don't know where I'd be today.
2001, in December of 2001, we got called back to court. And we had been filing appeals, we've been in all of this stuff, and so, even though I was super optimistic, I could see in my kids that they weren't really wanting to be optimistic anymore. They're just like, well, let this just be another day like every other day, because if I get my hopes up and my hopes are dashed again, I don't know if I can pick up the pieces and keep moving forward. So I said, well, that's okay, you guys, you don't have to be there and you don't have to believe for a good thing. But I have to, I have to hang on to the hope that one of these times, something good is going to happen. So we go to court, and we're in.
We go to court literally in the name of justice and mercy, is what it was called.
Right.
The motion that was filed was named justice and mercy.
Yeah, and so the judge says, okay, Mr. Tijerina, I understand that you have been maintaining your innocence for these past almost 11 years. But I also know that you were not living an exemplary life before you came to prison. Mm-hmm. And so I want to know what you've learned. What have you learned in the last 11 years? And so Ron stands up, and he had apparently had some things he wanted to say about the programs he'd been in, all this stuff. And he just kind of folds his paper and puts it down. And everybody's, waiting to see what he has to say. And he says, Your Honor, what I've learned is that this world can take everything from you. They can take your family from you and all of your worldly possessions. They can take your freedom from you. But the one thing they can't take from you is your word, your integrity. And he says, and that's what I've learned. I've learned to be a man of my word, and that my integrity is worth hanging on to. And he says, and that is what I want to instill in my sons, to be men of honor and men of their word. And literally 10 minutes later, Ron's free. I pick him up because they had to transport him back to the county jail. So I go and pick him up. He's still in his prison blues. And we're just like, oh my gosh, is this real? Only pick him up in a real car, mind you. So he gets in the car and we're like, wow. We go home.
Well, when they told me that my ride was here and they said, you can go right out that gate, I'm like, right out that door? Because that was the door you come in when you get locked up. And I didn't know that was the door you get to come out from. And all I see is a gate. That's why you hear. And when they said, yep, as soon as the gate opens, you can go and go. And there they are in the parking lot, and I'm just waiting for somebody to come back and just tell me, nope, there's been a mistake. Come on back in here. They're going to come and jump me, cuff me, drag me back in there, and it didn't happen. And it just happened. I could still feel that experience of just walking out and getting in the car and seeing my family there.
And going home and just standing in the kitchen, like all four of us, just crying. And the only thing we could say is, he kept saying, I'm home, I'm home. And we kept saying, you're home, you're home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that, there was no other words, only you're home, I'm home, I'm home. And it's like echo in this canyon. And we're all just bawling and just football huddle.
I've seen so many men lose their families. And for me to have my family still intact is a tremendous blessing. The price was, for me, yes, it was high. But to see what Christ did for me, the greater price that he paid, doesn't even compare. Doesn't even compare. I still got what I thought I had lost. God said, you haven't lost anything, you're only gaining. But what you have lost is your lower self. For a man must lose his life in order to find it, for Christ's sake.
Fast forward 6 months, and I'm 3 months pregnant, and we're doing all of the things that we know are the right things to do, or trying to do all of the things that we believe are the right things to do. And we're getting ready to go on vacation. We just got back with some groceries, and we get this call. I go in, run in, the phone's ringing. I pick up the phone, and it's our attorney, and he says, Eric says, Cathy, I'm so sorry. I just found out that the Court of Appeals overturned Ron's release, and he's going to have to go back to prison. And I dropped the phone, and I'm just like in such utter shock. And Ron walks in, and he's looking, and he tells me later he thought somebody had died. It was just this. So he picks up the phone, he talks to Eric, and hangs up, and it's like the whole mood, everything has changed from this kind of argument about, I don't want to carry this, and I don't want to do this, to all of a sudden silence. Because we all know. We've been there, we've been to prison, we already knew what that life was like, and it's like our worst nightmare. That Ron would come home, and then our family would be doing well, and then all of a sudden, pulled apart again. And so we picked up the phone, we started making all these phone calls, and making calls to really good people that were giving us just some really bad advice. And they were saying, just go, just run. It's not fair, this is wrong, and now you're having another baby, and just go. Go to Mexico, go to Canada, we'll get you a car, we'll get you a phone, we'll give you money. And I'm just, we're looking at each other, and I'm telling Ron, of course I blame it on the hormones, but I was saying, whatever you decide, whatever you do, we'll do. And so Blake and Brandon are there. They're 13 and 15 now, and they're just looking at each other back and forth, looking at us back and forth, and just not saying anything, because they know the balance of their lives is resting in what we say in the next 10 minutes, whatever decision we make. And of course we're all crying. And then Ron just is like, and he says, you don't even know how bad I want to run. Everything in me wants to run because I know what waits on the other side of those gates. He's like, I can't do it. And he says, you know, when I stood before that judge and he asked me what I learned, and I told him, he believed me. Because he didn't send the sheriff out to come with a warrant for my arrest and take me back to jail. He gave us a week. He gave me a week to get my stuff in order and to turn myself back in. And that's what I have to do. And that's when, you know, he just looked at Blake and Brandon and he says, guys, never forget that the right thing is always the right thing, no matter what the cost. And I never cried so much in my life as I cried that week of just thinking, please, God, no. You know, please, no. You know, we just finally got our family back together, and it's like our worst fear has come upon us. You know, that something would happen that would, after all that, that would almost make all that in vain. You know, like we did all that and then we still don't get to be a family. And, but nothing changed. And that next week we went, and there were over 100 people there, and everybody just kind of gathered together to show their support. And Ron walked back into prison.
What I fell into, I wish I would have asked when I had the chance, but now I'm lost and there's no way out. I saw it coming, so I pushed you out of the way. You saw it coming too, but you decided to stay. And you paid. Hold me back.
Hold me down.
Dry land.
Kiss the ground. We're
Coming home.
I know I've been commissioned. I'm going in this place. A different man. I'm going with my head up held high. I know who I am. They know I'm innocent. I know I'm innocent. But it's not over.
I saw it coming, so I pushed you out of the way. You saw it coming too, but you decided to stay. And you paid.
Here's a man who has served over 11 years for conviction of which to this very day he maintains his innocence, for which he was convicted without a single shred of physical evidence whatsoever. Through my mind right now is the understanding that if Ron were to be treated according to sentencing laws that have been passed since his incarceration, that in all likelihood he'd be a free man right now, having served 60% or better of his time. Here's a man who served 11 years behind prison bars for the sake of honor and integrity, and knowing that he could have been free in 3 or 4 years if he would have copped a plea. He's a man of honor, and our hearts are heavy. Our hearts are grieving for him and his family because his wife Cathy is now pregnant. His 2 boys have lived the better part of their lives without the presence of the father. Very close to him.
kiss the ground. We're
Coming home.
We're
Coming home.
We was at Dayton Correctional Institution, and we were blessed enough to be able to do a family day there. And the family day consists where the mom and dad, the husband and wife, or the mother of the kids, they all get to come together and spend a whole day in a visiting room and play and eat and do some workshops together, paint, just have total recess that entire day as a family. Like what we would take for granted, going to Cedar Point we're going to a Kings Island or some sort of amusement park. This is one day we're going to give you a Cedar Point experience or a Walt Disney World experience.
And see, in the gates, a Walt Disney World, a Cedar Point experience is just getting to be together and forget for a moment that you're in prison, that you don't get to be together.
So we're at DCI, and I'm not going to this family day. The staff is going in. I have my daughter, Bria, she's with us, and of course she's not going to go in there. So I said, you know what, I'll stay out. Bria and I, we're going to go to the hotel. We're going to hang out, and we're going to just, it's father and daughter day today, and we're going to go have our family day. And I believe Cathy was going to go in there and oversee it. But Bria says to me, oh, I love her. She says to me, while we're unloading the vans and everybody's taking the stuff in, she says, Papa, that's what she calls me. She calls me Papa. And she says, Papa, why didn't they ever do this for us? And I said, this is why we do it, Aunt. Because nobody ever did this for us. So we have to do it for them. I see my kids, and no father ever says in life, when we do say in life, I want our sons and daughters to grow up to become men of honor and men and women of virtue. We say that. I know men say that, but they never say, I want my son and daughter to come to prison like me. I haven't met a dad yet who's ever consciously said that.
I look at our family picture and look at my sons, and I think, my gosh, how they have had to persevere and press through and hang on in spite of all of the awful things said to them, about their family, about their dad. And, you know, I am so proud that they love, that they laugh, that they
live.
They live.
They live. When families get tried to see where their foundation is, and if you're conscious, you can see where it might be weak at, but you have an opportunity to fix it and to make it stronger, not only for your immediate family, but for the generations to come. You know, I'm a grandfather today, and to hear my grandkids, the 3 and 1, but to hear them say, Pawpaw, you know.
They open the door, and it's like I'm invisible.
And
They're like, Grandma's here, come here.
That's a promotion that, you know, I didn't even conceive. Before I went to prison, I had no concept for real of me being, I never saw it as that I have a possibility of becoming a grandfather one day.
My heart is
It was first Mother's Day at home, and my whole family's there, and we're playing some ridiculously silly game in the living room, and we are all laughing. I mean, we're laughing. And I thought, this is what's worth it. This is what makes it worth it. I mean, any struggle.
That was a fun game.
Yeah.
It was a fun day.
It was. It was a very fun day. We were.
A family.
Yeah.
Everybody was there.
Yeah. And not thinking about those 15 years, not thinking about living with the label, but just being family and knowing that if I'm hurt, if I fall down, this room full of people, they're going to catch me, they're going to help me, they love me, and I trust them, and I'm safe there, and they're safe here. And I think that really, that it all boils down to that, is helping families create that place of unconditional love and safety.
The sun is beating as I move along. The trees in the valley sing me their song. Come home, come home. Come home, come home. Come home, come home. Come home, come home. Home is where I find rest. Home is where I find living water. Home is where I find rest. Home is where I find living water.